I note some members from academia, from UTAC, from the Institute of Chartered Accountants, and a host of other stakeholders who are joining us this morning to listen to the Honorable Ato Forson, the minority ranking member responsible for finance, supported by his men and probably women who are assisting him do the work in the capacity of the Finance Committee of Parliament. Today, as we've invited you, mine is to introduce the Honorable Ato Forson to speak. But before he does so, just to share my own view with you, there's a government we promise from taxation to production. I didn't know the cycle was capable of ending from taxation to production to taxation. I'm sure the Honorable Ato Forson will lead us with this. There's a government we pledge double-digit growth of the economy. We are growing single-digit, and they further promise even a decline in the growth of the single-digit. A government which is funding consumption and not growth. Therefore, the ideas do not match their pledges. And therefore, without much ado, the essence of this is also for us to anticipate what the Ghanaian public, including other stakeholders, expect of us as a minority to raise those critical issues. A happy society or a happy country with its citizens is contingent on a better and superior management of the economy. So, the Honorable Ato Forson, this one is a proverb. The Nagumbe say that you can cut a woman with deceit, but you keep her with honesty and sincerity. This government is still keeping a woman as if they are still cutting the woman. On that note, Ato.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Sometimes this week, our Minister of Finance, the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, will present a review of the 2018 budget to Parliament. In the period following the presentation of the 2018 budget in November last year. Against this background, we deem it necessary to make known our positions and expectations regarding the policies, measures likely to be outlined in the budget review. Pursuant to this, we have structured this presentation to capture what we look forward to seeing in our analysis of the general performance of the economy this year. Again, let me also say that it's important for us to understand that we will be assessing the 18 months of the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's government. 18 months. Ladies and gentlemen, let me start from the economy. And when we talk about economy, I'll be talking about the gross domestic product, the GDP. According to April 2018 figures from the Ghana Statistical Service, Ghana's oil GDP is estimated to have grown from a negative 13.5% in 2016 to 39.6% positive in 2017, driven by the mining and oil sector, fueled by TEN and Sankofa oil and gas fields. This is a legacy the Mahama administration actually imposed and implemented, and we in the NDC are very proud of. The non-oil GDP growth is estimated to have declined from 5.1% in 2016 to 4.6% in 2017. Again, it's important to elaborate on this point. Let us not be deceived by overall GDP growth, because it's the non-oil GDP growth that is actually what creates jobs for me and you to benefit. So if you are to assess the non-oil GDP growth, being the rest sector growth, you will notice that the economy actually could not grow in 2017 comparatively to what we saw in 2016. For 2018, looking at the quarter-on-quarter structure, sectoral and GDP growth, Oil GDP growth declined from 2.1% in the fourth quarter of 2017 to 1.5%. In the first quarter of 2018, growth in the agriculture sector is estimated to have declined from 2.9% in the fourth quarter of 2017 to 0.4% the first quarter of 2018. Growth in the industrial sector declined from 4% in the fourth quarter of 2017 to 2.3% in the first quarter of 2018. It is only the service sector that growth improved from 0.9% in the fourth quarter of 2017 to 1.2% in the first quarter of 2018. Given this, the legitimate question to ask is, can the impressive oil sector growth of the economy in 2017 be sustained in the short to medium term? Now I'll take you to fiscal. The fiscal deficit is estimated to have dropped from 9.3% on commitment basis of GDP in 2016 to 6% on cash basis. All of a sudden, the Ministry of Finance has stopped reporting on commitment basis because they know that they are accumulating arrears and sweeping it under the carpet. The reduction in the fiscal deficit turnaround was achieved mainly through expenditure cut of 1.3% of GDP and a capping of transfers to earmark funds at 25% of tax revenue, resulting in the suspension and postponement of major projects. The question again we ask is, for how long can these projects be suspended or postponed for fiscal prudence at the peril of an improvement in the living standards of Ghanaians? Ladies and gentlemen, I will now take you to revenue. Let me begin with a quotation from no less a personality than the current Vice President and the head of the President Akufo-Addo's economic management team, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, on the 6th of June 2016 at a rally in Tema. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President said that we will move this country from taxation to production. I have worked as a governor of Bank of Ghana before. There is money in this country. We don't need to tax the poor to give them a better living condition. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what the Vice President said on 6th of June 2016 at Tema. The nation has awakened to the fact that this is just one of the populist themes that run through the New Patriotic Party's policy platform and commitment made as part of the 2016 election campaign, It will be recalled that they promised the good people of Ghana that a number of taxes, including many that were temporarily introduced by the then NDC government to stabilize the economy, would be scrapped should they be elected into power. In unusual populist rhetoric, they characterized these taxes as nuisance taxes, in that they had very low revenue yielding and they were stifling the private sector growth, as indicated in the quote above by His Excellency the Vice President. Ladies and gentlemen, another populist move, tax cut. Upon assumption of office in 2017, after winning the 2016 elections, the NPP government reiterated in their maiden 2017 budget statement and financial policy that the so-called nuisance taxes have to be scrapped because they impose a significant burden on the private sector and on average Ghanaian. They further stated that the aim of the government was to shift the focus of the economy from taxation to production. In March 2017, the finance minister in his presentation to Parliament announced that some tax handles has been abolished. To reiterate, the 2017 tax measures blatantly overlooked a number. The first one is that the NPP's own extravagant expenditure promises, impact of the proposed tax cut on tax revenues, given the impact of the global economic downturn on sub-Saharan African countries, some of which went into recession between 2014 and 2016, a situation that Ghana indeed avoided. Hence, it was merely fanciful and populist rhetoric to assume that tax cut is in a recovering global domestic economic environment would immediately spur or accelerate private sector operations and economic growth. In turn, it was amateurish to translate this situation into increased revenue to cater for shortfall in removing part of the temporary taxes and a gargantuan increase in expenditure for the campaign promises. Against this background, we wish to make the following observation. The first one is that it is unthinkable and naive for any economist to assume that cutting or worse still, eliminating taxes concurrent with expansion in expenditure in a small open economy like Ghana with a developing private sector would immediately translate into an economic growth and increase tax revenue. Hence, in 2017, not even the increased petroleum revenue from additional crude oil and gas produced, as well as the recovery in oil prices, has been able to take care of the overall shortfalls, revenue shortfalls. In essence, the institutional and structural rigidities of the Ghanaian economy would suggest to any economist that the nexus or the relationship between tax cut, economic growth, and tax revenue are more likely to be inelastic, meaning that a tax cut will spur economic growth and consequentially increase tax revenue. However, the increase in tax revenue will not be enough to offset the loss in tax revenue resulting from tax cut. This is to say, economic growth and tax revenue response to tax cut will be insignificantly small, and the effect can be permanent over the medium term. Ladies and gentlemen, this indeed, myself, I conducted a study with tax cut induce higher economic growth and tax revenue in Ghana, an assessment of NPP Manifesto Promise, which I published in the Daily Graphic on 6th of December, a day before the elections. Again, CTFM Online published it on the 2nd December 2016. My Joy Online published it after the election on the 19th of December 2016. These were populist policies which did not translate into a meaningful real GDP growth. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say that the IMF ECF report gave a number of observations. So I will take you to what the IMF report says. Government recommendations. Ladies and gentlemen, the populist approach to governance by the MPP has caught up with them. In the face of the realities of the poor results of their misguided policies, leading to the underperformance of revenue, the government has informed the IMF Board of Directors that the revenue they are considering the following tax measures that will be imposed shortly. And I've provided you the link of the IMF website that you can see what the government of Ghana has indeed agreed with the IMF that they are going to impose on the people of this country. The first one is that, before I even go there, let me alert you that we expect more unproductive anti-business killer taxes that the government is going to likely impose coming Thursday. The first one is an increase in value-added tax. It's an increase in value-added tax. And I expect that people of this country be aware that this government inherited Ghana Infrastructure and Investment Fund. VAT proceeds of about 2.5% of the total VAT is supposed to go into the Ghana Infrastructure and Investment Fund. They have all of a sudden decided to stop allocating that money to the value-added to the Ghana Infrastructure and Investment Fund, and they have allocated it to the budget. So already, the argument that they want additional 2.5% VAT to support the budget is flawed. They have taken the Ghana Infrastructure and Investment Fund money already to the budget. The introduction of a corporate minimum tax. Government is putting in place measures to introduce a minimum corporate income tax of 2.5% on turnover for all companies, irrespective of whether they make profit or loss. In essence, this is like a flat rate that imposes a presumptive tax regime designed for small and medium-sized enterprises. So this is what we should expect. Whether you make profit or not, the government of Ghana is going to impose a minimum corporate income tax on you. The next point is imposition of an excise tax on luxury vehicles. An imposition of excise tax on luxury vehicles. Under this policy, the Akufo-Addo government is set to impose an excise tax of 10% on luxury vehicles. That is, vehicles with engine capacity above 3.5 cc. So, going forward, if you were to import any vehicle above 3.5 cc, the description would be that that vehicle is a luxury vehicle. The fact that the current progressive regime already imposes a higher excise and import duty on these vehicles, the government is ignoring it. The petroleum excise tax also embeds a progressive use tax regime for these vehicles. So this is going to be like a double jeopardy. The next point is that they are going to reintroduce the reintroduction of supposedly abolished taxes. Ladies and gentlemen, in the IMF staff report again, the government has agreed with the IMF that not long ago, the VAT on fee-based financial services and real estate, they are contemplating bringing them back. So the question is, why did you remove it in the first place? And then you turn around to say that you are going to bring it back. We are all watching them. We are watching. The next point is an increase in communication service tax from the current 6%. So our friends in the telco business, communication service tax is going to go up from 6% to up to 12%. And this is again in the IMF document that I've provided a link to you. Now, the argument is that initially they had wanted to introduce the chop money tax. We call it umbrella tax. It's but a tax on mobile money. The government decided to backtrack. Now they are bringing additional tax on communication service tax. Increased net contribution to NHIL. And ladies and gentlemen, if you give me a chance, I will elaborate on this one. Government will soon burden workers and employees with 1.5% and 1% respectively. So if you are an employee, you are going to pay 1.1%, an employer is going to pay 1.5%. This is a measure by a government that promised to tackle the national health insurance program from a more competent cost approach. This increment would have been entirely unnecessary had government not taken the unwise decision to cap the accruals to the national health insurance levy. It appears that the government is seeking to punish the poor taxpayer after its own flawed policies that had led to a cash crunch for the scheme. A case in point can be traced to the budget statement, the 2008 budget statement, Appendix 2018 budget statement, Appendix 4B. And it shows that national health insurance should have had 2.2 billion, but the government decided to allocate 1.8 billion to the fund. What this means is that the remaining 419 million was used to fund the budget. Now, you have capped the budget and taken the national health insurance money, 420 million. In spite of that, you have decided to increase net contribution to the national health insurance levy. I think we'll have problems with that. It is worth noting that as long as the capping remains in place, any additional revenue accruing from the increased deduction from net contribution will not plug the funding gap that has been used as justification for the deduction in the first place. The amounts so accrued will not be capped. This means that Ghanaian workers will not have the deduction made from their net contribution that will not entirely be used to finance the national health insurance scheme or their health care needs. Again, the government intends to extend the national fiscal stabilization levy. The national fiscal stabilization levy will be broadened. Ladies and gentlemen, you agree with me that the government decided to extend the national fiscal stabilization levy that was supposed to have expired in the year 2017. They extended it for 2 more years, additional years, for 2018 and 2019. They intend to take it off in the year 2020 during the election year. Now, what they intend to present before Parliament is that they are going to extend the coverage. The original national fiscal stabilization levy was supposed to cover only 8 companies, or in a sector, 8 sectors. Now they are going to expand it to cover all sectors of the economy. Double jeopardy. Ladies and gentlemen, it is appropriate to quote our Vice President once again. He said again on the same day, at Tema on the 6th of June, and if I will take his quotation, he says that we are a party of production and not taxation. And this is a philosophical difference between the NPP and the NDC. Your guess is as good as mine as to the accuracy of this claim in light of all the taxes the Akufo-Addo government is heaping on Ghana. additional impositions and appropriations. In spite of all these taxes, they have others they intend to do. The first one is the sale of state assets and monetization of gold royalties. In the budget statement, they have earmarked and they've said that an amount of 1.7 billion will be achieved from divestiture, sale of state assets, and 1.4 billion from the monetization of royalties, in particular that of gold. Note that as enshrined in the Constitution, I'll talk about it later, a share of these royalties currently goes to our assemblies and traditional authorities. Another double jeopardy, given that the central government is already capping the disassembly common fund that is due to go to our local assemblies at the sub-national level. They also intend to sell communication spectrum. They will sell communication spectrum and they're expecting to raise an amount of $50 million US. In spite of that, the telcos are now being coerced to pay upfront what we call the prepayment of telcos license fees. So if you are a telecommunication company, your license is due for renewal, let's say in 2019 and 2020. Because the government is cash strapped, they are now talking to the telcos to pay upfront. This, indeed, is not the way to go. It is prepayment, and the classification, it is a short-term liability, and is part of public debt. Let me also say that the unprecedented and tax and levy measures, the government intend to raise additional 3.8 billion Ghana cedis from the 1.7 billion divestiture, royalties of 1.4, communication spectrum and telcos fees of 700, all to put together will give you 3.8 billion. We want to take this opportunity to caution the government against the failure to carefully assess the impact of these transactions on future revenues and its flexibility going into the future. In addition, the implication for assemblies and traditional authorities, the government needs to bear in mind that the planned monetization of mineral royalties will not be debt neutral. We disagree with them that they cannot classify it as if it's not part of public debt. This is because we all know that prepayment is a long-term liability and it should be classified as part of public debt. Such, should they be successful in getting Parliament to approve it? Anyway, we haven't gotten there yet, so if Parliament approves it, then we are going to get them to classify it as such. But we can assure our civil society organization and the people of this country that the minority will put up a good show. Let me also refer them to the Constitution, Article 267(2) and Article 2676 of the Constitution. That reminds them that the government cannot monetize the gold royalties for the purposes of financing the national budget. Since Article 2676 of the Constitution is very clear on how the revenue should be shared among the traditional authorities and the disassemblies at the sub-national level. We, the minority members of Parliament, will resist any attempt to disregard the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now take you to public debt. And again, the vain promise that we will not borrow. The vain promise. Ladies and gentlemen, another area where the New Patriotic Party engaged in a lot of misleading commentary and outright populism, whilst in opposition, is the public debt. Amidst the deliberate misrepresentation of the fact about our own debt position, its computation and rationale for borrowing, they also claim to possess the magic to mobilize domestic resources to finance their campaign promises. They dismiss borrowing as a lazy man's approach to economic management and promise a different paradigm. Contrary to this claim, our public debt has ballooned from 154 billion, to 154 billion, excluding the energy bond of 4.7 billion, as at May 2018, from the 122 billion in January 2017. Can I take that again? Contrary to this claim, our public debt has ballooned to 154 billion cedis, excluding the energy bond of 4.7 billion as at May 2018, from what they inherited 122 billion as at January 2017. The public debt is expected to increase further by 3.8 billion should the financing plan that I talked about, 3.8 billion financing plan of selling state assets, monetizing mineral royalties, get telcos to pay upfront, amounting to 3.8 billion. Should that fail to go up, should that fail to materialize, then the public debt is going to go up by 3.8 billion. In addition to this, the government has issued a bond of 2.2 billion to Ghana Commercial Bank, GCB, in respect of the assumption of the collapse of the UT Bank and Capital Bank. This has added to the public debt and will be borne by the poor taxpayer. Furthermore, the government has earmarked another 2.3 billion cedis as a possible cost to the taxpayer should Unibank collapse. This means that the financial sector related costs for 2018 will also increase the public debt by 4.5 billion cedis. The two put together 2.2 billion and 2.3 billion. We were the first to bring this to the attention of Ghanaians. This issuance of public debt to defray private debt was not done in a transparent manner, as the policy was not presented to Parliament and the public for debate before agreement was reached with GCB, the IMF, and other stakeholders. The debt service commitment will be met from taxes imposed on Ghanaians as a precautionary against similar occurrence in future. We, the minority, will urge the government to adopt the non-performing asset recovery trust, what we call the NAPAT approach. On page 170 of the 2018 budget, the following plan for mobilizing resources were outlined by the government. And the government said that they are going to borrow from the domestic market for the purposes of financing the deficit in the budget, an amount of 8.2 billion. Again, they are going to draw down on project loans of about 2.9 billion. Issuance of sovereign bond, which they were successful, they are going to draw down an amount of 4.7 billion. Now, what we are saying is that if you are to add everything together, the borrowings plus a possible failure to monetize the mineral royalties and others is going to add up to about 24.7 billion. Based on what I've said earlier, we in the minority project that in the year 2018 alone, the government will be adding about 25 billion to the public debt stock. 25 billion to the public debt stock. This will add to the borrowing for 2017 of about 26 billion. The public debt therefore can be projected as end of 2017 as at end of 2018 to be 173 billion cedis. 173 billion cedis. Indeed, this will take us above the 70% threshold. 70% threshold of a debt-distressed country. Now I'll take you to GNPC. The Ghana National Petroleum Company intends to borrow an amount of $564.81 million to fund its operations, including $100 million for the construction of agricultural roads, $20 million for the construction of its corporate head office in Accra, $10 million for the construction of an operational office in Tabradi, $13.4 million to refurbish its petroleum house, $2 million to build a transit quarters for staff visiting Tabradi, and among others, all in US rates, that any borrowing exceeding CD equivalent of $30 million for the purposes of exploration, development, and production shall be approved by Parliament and shall be in consonance with the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, Act 815/2011. GNPC has not presented anything before Parliament for Parliament to give them an approval to undertake this borrowing exercise. Yet we are aware that they have gone very far in securing this loan. We know their chairman recently bought buses for his party, and we are interested in this matter. We are interested in this matter. In concluding on debt, we urge the government to stop beating its chest on tapering public debt around 70% of GDP. They should have done more, given the potential for growth and revenue that it has inherited from President Mohammed's administration. So indeed, I'm surprised that the government is thinking that they've done so well that we should clap for them. There's no clap in this matter. They should have done better than what they have done. I'll take you to expenditure. The question I've always asked myself is that, do we have a revenue or an expenditure program as a country? Do we have a revenue or an expenditure program as a country? The focus so far has been on revenue mobilization and public debt. At a time, a number of factors have actually given revenues a relatively boost, including recovery in crude oil prices below $40 per barrel in 2015 and 2016, and now to about $70 per barrel currently. Additional crude oil and gas flows from TEN and Sankofa fields at a relatively higher prices noted above, which led to an increase of about 82% in oil and gas revenue for 2017 alone. Record flow from non-conventional sources such as the Temporary Energy Sector Levies Act from the NPPs, that the NPP appears to be making virtually permanent with the issuance of a 10-year bond. Revenue flows from the retention of all the temporary taxes that they promised to introduce. Now they have retained all of them, and we should be aware that revenue is still flowing. Increase in GRA nominal tax revenue as well as the MDAs or MMDAs non-tax revenues. Central government capping policy that has appropriated revenue of about 3.7 billion from the district assemblies, traditional authorities, MMDAs, and other statutory funds such as Road Fund, GET Fund, National Health Insurance Fund, and even the district assembly common fund, instead of aligning it to the end as the NDC had envisaged. Record domestic and external borrowing in just 18 months to support the budget, something the government promised never to do. We do not overlook the need for GRA to raise more taxes or tax revenues through improved performance and in line with the Ghana's middle income status. However, since increase in tax revenue always lag behind recoveries in economies, care is needed not to put pressure on households and businesses to meet unrealistic promises made to the electorate that in the case of increasing expenditures. Now we want to sound a warning to the government. We are saying, beware, fiscal pressures are mounting. The fiscal pressures are mounting on the state, and the government should beware. The evidence seems to suggest that the fiscal credibility is being compromised. Regarding government expenditure, the background is clear. The large fiscal slippages are being created by the government. Inability to raise additional revenues to meet unrealistic promises that are increasing expenditure. The projected deficit of target of 4.5% of GDP would be missed due to a huge deviation in revenue and expenditure and the financial sector related cost of about 4.5 billion. Aside the fact that the government is accumulating arrests and sweeping them under the carpet, I'm sure the contractors here are very worried. Arrests are mounting. Government doesn't want to talk about it. And arrests are supposed to be paid, and they are not paying it. And it's important that we also stress that the government has already decided to cut an amount of 850 million on already certain sectors of the economy. So we expect again that the government will cut additional expenditures of 850 million. So the rest can only continue to be mounted. As noted, the government decision to cap transfers to statutory funds is gradually collapsing all statutory funds. The capping law was introduced purposely to free some revenue for government to undertake opulent expenditure, but this has rather proven woefully inadequate due to the huge fiscal burden emanating from the introduction of their new expenditures as a result of their campaign promises. Despite being capped, the District Assembly Common Fund is going to be burdened with an additional cost since the National Builders Corps has been aligned to the District Assembly Common Fund. The program, which has been estimated to cost 0.2% of GDP, will be funded through the allocation of the District Assembly Common Fund. And ladies and gentlemen, it's a shame that the District Assembly Common Fund will now suffocate to death due to the Capping and Realignment Act. The Ghana Exim Bank has noted that it is to use its revenues to support the One District, One Factory initiative. While we have noted that the case of GNPC already, since this will be appropriating SOE's revenues to support budget purposes, we urge the government to make a full disclosure of the pressures being put on the state institutions to appropriate funds for political goals. The government within the medium term is also cutting back on payment to construction companies. We have already drawn attention to the financial engineering that appears to enable the government to do an offset rather than to settle their liabilities. These companies are collapsing due to non-payment of government-owned amount owed to them by government, resulting in an upsurge of non-performing loans. We project that the minister will again cut capital expenditure during the media review. In fact, this is in the IMF statement that they are going to cut it by 850 million. Ladies and gentlemen, I will conclude. And in conclusion, a clear fact that emerges from the discussion so far is that the current crisis confronting the managers of the economy, compelling them to impose a raft of heavy taxes on already burdened populace, is self-imposed. The Akufo-Addo government should be wary of burdening Ghanaians in its desperation to save face. The fiscal problem is the direct result of shallow opportunism and populism. It is obvious that the promise made by the NPP in 2016 and their initial action, as contained in the 2017 budget, were intended only to get them elected and convey an impression of fidelity to these promises. The reality, however, is that it has led to a major problem for the economy, which have translated into severe hardship for the generality of our people. Inflation has begun rising again and is now in double digits, following a fleeting stay at single digits in the last 2 months or so. The Ghana cedi continues its catastrophic nosedive and is showing no sign of improvement despite a lofty talk from the government and the central bank. It is currently trading around 4.85 to the dollar and appears that almost set to reach about 5 cedi to the dollar. If the trend is not curbed immediately, this will happen before the end of the year. This has in turn led to a steep rise in prices of goods and services, leading to more hardship for the people. Fuel prices have increased astronomically, as have the transport fares as well. Key campaign promises like One District, One Factory, One Village, One Dam, among others, remain unfulfilled, with contradictory pronouncements from various government officials as the status of this project. This is now the order of the day. Very contradicting each other. Somebody says 10, others say 6, somebody says 0. Contrary to the promise not to borrow, the Akufo-Addo government is borrowing at breakneck speed in alarming proportion almost 2 years in office, they have borrowed nearly half of what the NDC borrowed in 8 years. More worrying, they have virtually no serious capital investment to show for this level of borrowing, except a reckless dissipation of borrowed funds on consumption, thus saddling present and future generations with debt they will struggle to pay in future. This has come at a time when a major crisis is inflicting the health sector, where patients is critically needed of healthcare are being turned away or owing to severe congestions. This is made all the more problematic by the fact that apart from its inability to make any investment in the expansion of healthcare, the Akufo-Addo government has inexplicably decided to allow huge investment made by President John Dramani Mahama's administration in healthcare infrastructure to rot away by refusing to either operationalize them or complete them. Ladies and gentlemen, instead of a clear program to address these concerns, the government has rather chosen to compound the suffering of Ghanaians by introducing more taxes after making a song and dance out of the removal of the supposed nuisance taxes. These taxes will no doubt hit Ghanaians' households and businesses very hard and further erode their already dwindling disposable income. All of this is happening at a time of great waste and profit legacy by the government. Only last week, the Auditor General report in the activities of the MDAs revealed that nearly $1 billion Ghana cedis had already been squandered or wasted at the Ministry of Finance. Ministry of Finance. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure everybody saw the pack where Ministry of Finance is leading it with almost 632 million Ghana cedis as a result of infractions, failure to collect withholding taxes, and others. The conduct of the Akufo-Addo government clearly underscores the need to be wary of boastful politicians who tout capacity that they do not possess, promise heaven and deliver hell, and above all, prepare to use the most disingenuous falsehood and roses to capture political power. In them, we are seeing a government that clearly lied to the people and claimed it was going to be able to raise revenue to meet every expenditure without borrowing and affecting traditional expenditures. The dire situation should compel the Akufo-Addo government to apologize to Ghanaians for their deception and follow the advice of national leaders to organize a national forum to find solutions to problems caused by their mismanagement of the economy, leading to misalignment of the budget that has saddled all of us and is going to saddle all of us with more debt going into the future. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity.
And what I would say first of all is that it takes two to tango. We need to have mutual respect for each other. So I hear our brother from the TUC about working together, putting the country first, and reducing the partisanship. That really and ideally is the way to go. But when consistently the New Patriotic Party's leaders, President Akufo-Addo, and even more guilty, the Vice President, His Excellency Mahmoud Bawumia, seeks to always and very rapidly attack the other side. Anytime you offer suggestions, his initial statement, his conditioned response is that you are ignorant. You don't have any sense in your head. You don't read, and all of that. Very condescending, very insulting. Recently, when former President Mahama sought to ask that the fall of the city. He recalls how Dr. Baumia has said that it represents weak fundamentals. And he only sought to play back the statements of Dr. Baumia. You saw Dr. Baumia's response. Former President Mahama had just, without adding any word of his own, just recalled what Dr. Baumia said. Dr. Baumia's response to the former president was that he can understand the former president's ignorance, that he will teach him economics, and then proceeds to go on and on. And as we all know, he was later exposed by other economists who could not, agree with what he was putting out. So we need some respect, and we need to elevate the discourse from the arena of insults, from the dog fight dog kind of politics, so that we can all sit around the table. Now, there was also the other concern about alternatives. Have we offered alternatives? Throughout Honorable Ato Forson's presentation, he has offered alternatives. And there are many alternatives in this. For example, he has consistently said that we should look at the expenditure side of things. It's not just about increasing taxes and increasing hardships. We have talked about the size of government. We have talked about the policy initiatives. For example, the solution to the sale of, the UT Capital Bank challenge. We have said that it is not appropriate, it is not fair to raise public debt to address a private debt where the shareholders get away and they are not made to account. So there are many solutions that we have offered, and we encourage you to get a copy of the 19-page presentation and you see the solutions. Nooks, your concerns about Get Fund, it's even worse. In March this year, when the formula was brought, Get Fund was entitled to 1.8 billion cedis, the 2.5% VAT that Get Fund is entitled. Get Fund was given only 924 million because of the capping, just half of what they deserve. Now, what is even worse is that all of that allocation is going into helping with free SHS. There again, we were all in this country. We advised that let us target the needy. That is what we were doing under our progressively free SHS program. The data is there, EMI's data is there, the education sector performance report is there. Target the needy. And look at all the crisis that has happened because of just 1 year. We've been touting free SHS in this country as if free SHS is for all students at the secondary school level. Only the first years. So you can imagine September this year when 2 streams have to be catered for. Those who are moving to second year and those who are coming to first year. You can imagine. No wonder last week it was reported in the press that the Get Fund administrator is seeking to collateralize Get Fund. So they want to raise 2.9 billion cedis because there's no money left for critical education infrastructure. Schools are not being built. The 200 community-based schools, we started 124, 76 abandoned. And all the remaining projects in the education sector have been abandoned. How can we achieve quality education? So please, there are many solutions here that we have preferred. But I think that we would also expect our stakeholders, civil society organizations, who are not in the political space, to try and make their voices heard. Don't leave this discourse to only the politicians, because everybody is needed to build this country. We cannot leave the construction of this state to only one side of the country at any point in time. All of us must get involved. So we thank you very much for the opportunity.